Alan Karpick with the famed Tom Dienhart here. I know one of our favorite. Tom and I love to talk about old Purdue football stuff, and we could record our stuff. I think Newbert calls us the two. I don't know. He has the two things on the Muppets or whatever. The two old men talking back and forth. That's us, and we're talking about Gary Forsteck, and we're talking about 1979 Purdue Notre Dame and Tom Dienhart sitting in the bleachers on the field, which was true at the time. I think one of the second or third largest crowd in the history of Ross-Ade Stadium that day. And of course, today on Tuesday, Purdue announced its official capacity, and we'll talk about that. But this is the buy sell feature, and we have fun thanks to Kyle Spray and the folks at acrepro.com. It is your place for farm management, and if you need to buy some farmland, talk to Kyle and his group, because they are the experts at acrepro.com, and we'll also put the phone number on the post as well. All right, Tom, I got some dudes.
Wait, Alan, real quick before you leave the nostalgia road. I went to the Tom Schatz Purdue memorabilia.
Yes, how did that go?
And I picked up
the 73.
1973. They got a 1977 football media guide. So there you go, buddy. How about that?
I hate to break it to you, my friend, but we have at the Golden Black Archives, we've got them all.
I've got my own personal
In fact, I have somehow, when I first, and I've been doing this, 27 years, and I don't know what, but we used to do the programs at Golden Black.
Yeah.
Back in the day, up until I think we stopped doing them in 2001 or 2002. I can't remember. Lost the contract to Host Communications. Not to Pat Henderson. He did not do us in, but somebody did. No, it was all good. But anyway, I digress. But I have all these covers for some reason, because we had a zillion extra programs over the years, and I did the archives back when I was an intern. You were an intern in the athletic department. So was I, a few years before you were. Mm-hmm. And we had so many these extra programs that I have those covers somewhere. I have them, and they're all stacked, and they're probably worth something, because you could make yourself a hellacious Purdue room with these program covers going back. I don't know that they go back, but there's some great program covers over the years. I mean, in fact, I just posted one on Facebook of the dedication game. A friend of mine, Brian Tam, sent me the cover of the and I hadn't seen that in a long time. The dedication game, the first game in Ross-Ade Stadium, Purdue in Indiana, on November the 22nd, 1924. We talk about that, wrote about that a little bit today in the 100-year look back at Ross-Ade Stadium. So a lot of good stuff. This is the time. As crazy as the offseason is with college football, and you've lived it more than anybody in this transfer portal, NIL world, which is the way the world is now, it is fun to get back to the fact that there is great history in this game, and this is why people care about it and why they're worried about it, because there's so much to this thing called college football, and so many stories. And you talked about the coaches that you're going to write about. I won't make a spoiler of the Purdue coaches, the last 10 Purdue coaches to win their first game.
Just the last 10 debuts are
10 debuts.
Only 4 of them won their debut.
Only 4 of them can win, and I was lucky enough to have the right answer. But it's a good question, and it's and what 2 of the best of those 10. Right? 3 of the best of those 10, as a hint, did not win. The 3 best coaches of those 10 did not win. Right. So anyway, funny stuff. All right. So buy sell is how this works. And I come up with random silly questions that make Tom think hard or fake it, of things that is he going to buy or sell, that this is going to happen either this week or this season or whatever. So we're going to start with the Big Ten, and Tom does a great job of chronicling his. People always argue with him, but who's at the top of the Big Ten power poll, which Michigan is this week for Tom, and I would agree with that. But as crazy as Jim Harbaugh is, but there are 8 conference games this week that don't include and aren't head-to-head. Of course, Ohio State plays Iowa, Minnesota plays Nebraska, and Rutgers plays Northwestern. But of the 8, Tom, and all are favored, including Purdue, will are you buying or selling that one of those other 8 games, and that being Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Purdue, Maryland, Illinois, Penn State, and Iowa, will one lose?
Lose, not cover, just lose outright.
Lose outright. And then mind you, Purdue has got the least favorite of that group at 4.5. Michigan, not surprisingly, is the biggest favorite at 35.5 over East Carolina.
Wow.
Are you buying or selling that somebody's going to lose?
I think somebody's going to lose, Alan. I really do. The first game of the year in college football is the ultimate wild card for obvious reasons, right? There's no preseason games. There's so much new on these rosters, Alan, with like you talked about the portal. And my gosh, I mean, nobody really knows what they've got. And it's got to be scary for coaches. You can practice all you want against yourself. You can watch film. You can do all your drills, Alan. It all helps to a degree, but nothing really matters until they flip those lights on and somebody's chasing you and trying to take your head off.
Yep.
We just don't know. And again, special teams, that's the one area where coaches always told me in the past. Special teams, that very first game of the year, you usually don't go live and practice on special teams covering punts and kickoffs. So you can have breakdowns there big time. You can have some returns in that opening weekend, maybe more so than other weekends, just because of the newness of everything. So I'm going to say somebody's going to get tripped up here. Who it is, I'm not sure. I mean, it could be Purdue, Alan. As much as Boilermaker fans don't want to hear that, I think we all realize the perils of playing Fresno State. I think the point spread says all you need to know about what Vegas and the bettors think of this game. Fresno's good, Alan. And Jeff Tech is a good coach. I go back to Pat Hill. Fresno's a blue-collar, tough, proud program. And they're going to be very well coached. They got a great defensive coordinator. I talked to Brock Spack this last week. He talked about Kevin Coyle, their DC, said he's a great guy, great coach. And again, man, it could be a tight one. It could be a nail biter. It could be a fourth quarter game. So maybe the Boilermakers pull it out, but maybe one of these other teams is one that really slips up here, and we see an upset by one of these heavily favored Big Ten teams. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll buy that also. I think it's going to be someone like Illinois.
Yeah.
I don't see West Virginia, even though that's a huge rivalry. You know, West Virginia is the most. If you think Purdue fans have a complex against Indiana, Notre Dame, and the state of Indiana, West Virginia is a complex against.
Where's that game at
Penn State. So I just don't see them. I don't think they beat them there, but. And Maryland and Towson, I know there's no line on that game. I don't see that happening. But I could see, we've seen Central Michigan over the years. That's the great thing. Again, how many was it? 2 times in the 1990s? Yeah, Central Michigan goes into Michigan State and wins. They are a 15-point dog in Spartanland. I wouldn't want to be a Michigan State fan in that one if they or Michigan State coach, so to speak, if you lose that one. So I'm with you. I think it's somebody else than Purdue. I like Purdue this weekend for no unearthly reason. But I do think that you're going to see somebody go down to that group.
I really like the Thursday night game. I know it's not on our radar. It's a Big Ten game, but that Nebraska and Minnesota game, that is going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun, man.
Every game this year is just going to be, I mean, who the hell knows? I mean, there's so many missing pieces. And then you throw in new coaches, you throw in any level of controversy.
What's the Western going to look like?
Right. I mean, everybody's completely counting them out, and rightfully so.
Maybe not. We'll see.
But maybe not. And you got Nebraska. Who knows? So, yeah, that's going to be a fun one. All right, next one. We'll go on to something a little bit more straightforward. TJ Sheffield, will he lead Purdue in number of receptions, not in yards, number of receptions? Now, Garrett Miller not expected to play, not going to play, right? But what do you see on that one? You buying or selling that?
Yeah, again, not to get off on a tangent, but I was surprised to not see him on the depth chart.
Yeah, I was too.
Hey, well, I'm just going to say this: it's very disappointing. But anyway, I'm selling, Alan. I'm selling. I'm going with Deion Burks. I'm in the Deion Burks this year. I think most people are. I think, Yeah, I know Sheffield's a fifth-year senior and Burks is, I think, a redshirt sophomore, but we've heard Coach Walters kind of go on about Deion Burks, calling him a freak, called him an action figure at Big Ten Media Days. I know Bruce Feldman, the national writer for The Athletic and works for Fox, had Deion on his freaks list too. And I think number 4 is going to be the guy this year for Purdue, working out of the slot, get him the ball in space. He's going to be fast, explosive. We've seen glimpses of it, Alan, but maybe we see the full-fledged Deion Burks here in 2023. He's my guy, so I'm selling the notion that Sheffield's going to be the guy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you on that. It's going to be interesting to see in Burks. Will they incorporate him a little bit in the reverse run game? That's what I don't get a good feel for. And you may, I'm not a student of the air raid offense or know exactly what I'm going to see. So it's going to be interesting to see what wrinkles Graham Harrell puts together and how they get yardage. We're not talking, you've said this, chronicled this many times about Purdue and, not going to necessarily be essential that they can stretch the field. Can they move the chains with that offense and consistently do that and put Hudson Card, Purdue's quarterback, in position to make big plays? And that's what's going to be fun to watch. That's why I think it will be one of those more interesting openers. And I'll get to that subject next. And I'm going to even change what we talked about off screen a little bit. Most intriguing opener. I was going to say biggest opener because you use 3 games: Northwestern 2018, Penn State 2022, Oregon State 2021. But I would also argue for intrigue, just flat intrigue. Of those 3 games, is this one more intriguing than any of those 3? Just because we don't know what we're going to see, and we got a new coach, we got all these new things, got a new quarterback with a lot of hype that we haven't seen outside of what we saw in Texas in that 4-game stretch last year. What are you saying? Is this the most intriguing of the bunch? Are you buying or selling?
I'm buying that. I mean, I just think, given the level of newness here, Alan, I think it trumps any of those games you mentioned. 18 Northwestern, the Oregon State game, 21, and Penn State last year. Those were interesting in their own rights for different reasons. Rondale Moore's debut in 18, of course. Oregon State game, Alan. Purdue's coming off back-to-back
huge game. Now, we said intrigue and not important. And
I think intrigue. It's still intrigue. I mean, this one, Alan, the intrigue is off the charts here. It's off the charts with a new coach who's 37 years old, never been a head coach. The Purdue note said that the average age is 39 years old of the staff. And we talked about the roster, the portal. I think that the notes say there's 17 players in the 2 deep that were in the portal or came from the portal.
Yeah.
On and on it goes, Alan, and led by the quarterback, Hudson Card. So I think because of those things, for me, the roster turnover, the new staff, the new schemes, for me, this is the most intriguing opener we've seen in recent memory.
Yeah, I would agree from pure intrigue of just not knowing what we're going to see. Exactly. I'd go all the way back to your childhood and kind of mine too. I think it was a senior in high school, 1977, Purdue, Michigan State, only because you had Mark Harmon coming, and Harmon didn't actually start that game. A guy named Joe Metallic did. But, the fact that you had a new coaching staff, a young Jim Young, and they were coming off of, but they weren't coming off a winning program with Alex Agassi. So, even Jeff Brom's debut, you didn't have a lot of expectations. In fact, Purdue was a 3-touchdown underdog against Louisville, I believe it was. They played very well and had a chance to win that game, obviously. But and against a Heisman Trophy quarterback. But this is I would agree with you. I think I buy that completely. This is the most intriguing. Now, in terms of most important, that Oregon State game, you and I talked about that offline. That game was really, and of course, Oregon State's program has continued to, until the last few weeks with the Pac-12 demise, really was heading in the right direction. And that is, and yet Purdue had a big win in that game in a close, relatively close game against the Beavers in West Lafayette. And that was a big game to kind of turn Purdue off that 2-year losing streak and get itself back to winning football and on a night game in Ross-Ade Stadium. But that might have been the biggest one. Penn State and Northwestern were big games because there was so much excitement about, and so much, though Purdue was an underdog against Penn State last year, had a chance to win that. And against Northwestern, of course, Rondale Moore was electric, and they had a chance to win that one too, and got behind late. Northwestern pulled it out. And of course, Northwestern ended up having a great year under Pat Fitzgerald, as I recall. So, or a good year. So anyway, I think you're right on that one. My next one: 10 or more passes than rushes for the Purdue offense on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm buying that. I've talked to Graham Harrell a few times about, balance, run pass balance. And, they always say that the right things. They're going to take whatever the defense is giving them, right? But I think this is offense that's always going to lean toward the pass. And I think Purdue's going to have at least 10 more passes than rushes here on Saturday for sure. Look for them to work at probably a quick pace here. And, it's always been described as an air raid based offense. And Graham has pointed out numerous times since he was hired that when you say air raid, people always think of Michael Eaton throwing 80 passes a game or whatever. And it's certainly, that's the reputation, the image that pops in a lot of people's heads when you hear air raid, but that's not necessarily the case. It's sort of a basic scheme, right? And I do think he does want to be balanced. So I think, again, long story short, not to be real long-winded about this, I think Purdue is going to lean more on the pass here throughout this whole year. Why not when you got Hudson Card? But I do think, Alan, these running backs they've got, I think it's the best collection they've had, I've said, since Jeff Brom's first year. And people remember that crew with Markel Jones and DJ Knox and Richie Worship and Tario Fuller and guys like that. It was pretty salty crew. They got 3 good backs this year. I think they're not just going to run, they're going to catch it. So, again, I think we're going to see plenty of passes on Saturday and throughout this season.
Going to be a warm day on Saturday. At least that's what the prediction is, even for a noon start.
What are they saying? Do you know yet?
Well, I think not as warm as they originally said, maybe 77, 78 degrees at kickoff. Okay. But so it's not going to be outrageous. But it'll be interesting to see. I'll stick with what you say there. I think that probably makes sense, though. It's going to be one of the things that you and I have talked about this, and I'm 1/10 as close of it to it as you are. But the whole notion of, I'm really curious to what role Mockabee plays and how they use him and how that all plays out to what Devin had that great freshman year and certainly has shown he can run the football at this level. But we'll see if that all. You just never know when guys get in new situations with new staffs and what staff's like, and a little bit hard to tell. One guy we think they do like, and Jeff Brom did too when he first got him, Tyrone Tracy. And by sell on him, of course, he's a running back that was kind of a slot guy last year that got moved to running back. But will he run the ball more than 5 times this Saturday, Tom? That's this obscure, silly notion, but do you think he will?
I think he will. I'll buy that. And I think there's a lot of intrigue around Tyrone Tracy, Alan. It's a good guy to sort of single out, if you will. We always talk about Mockabee and Card and Burks and Garrett Miller, but Tyrone Tracy could end up being a real X factor for this offense. Talented guy. 6th-year player, Alan. He got out of high school in 2018, if you can believe it. Never was a real natural wide receiver. I was told all along, this is a guy that in high school was a running back, and he sort of transitioned to receiver when he went to Iowa. And you could see there's never a real comfort level catching the ball downfield. Right. And I think this move is going to dovetail real well with his skill set. And I think he's going to see at least 5 carries. And if this offense is as good as we hope, I think he can end up being a real key guy who maybe ends up getting, 80 carries this year, 70 carries, and catches maybe 20 or 30 passes. And he's going to return kicks too, Alan. So I think he's a veteran guy that they're going to want to lean on to play a role, not just, again, on offense, but also on special teams.
Yeah, and the guy that, again, they're talking about, and you got to think he is going to be in the mix from that standpoint, and you got to believe that you'll see him. But I don't know. I think he might get 3 or 4. Will be interesting to see, and I have nothing to base that on. It's hard to. It's just more chatter than anything else. But
it's so much depending on how the game unfolds, right? If they get a lead, and
well, and also I do think what's interesting, or at least what I look for a little bit in these games, is the alignment. A little bit is going to tell you a little bit. And I'm not saying Ryan Walters is a BS guy. He's not. All coaches have things they talk about, and they talk about it for a reason. But will things align with what the storyline has been since the spring? I don't know. And it's just interesting to see what the alignment is. And you're right. Game situation, you get down 14-0. And all of a sudden everything's out the window. So it's unfair to lay it all that way, but it's going to be interesting to see if things go as planned, and they rarely do in that season opener. We've had some crazy ones over the years. All right. Purdue announced its capacity. It's 61,441. You and I grew up in an era where it was 69,200 for many years. In the last few years, it's been 57 change. I was a little surprised that it was that much, because obviously they have the fewer seats in the section, which is, I guess, section 107 now, or whatever it is, where the Tiller Tunnel is. So that's going to get fixed. But they have a lot more seats in the south end zone where the students are going to be. So my buy sell to you, will Purdue meet or exceed that number 3 times this year? And my logic is thinking, well, we know Syracuse is a sellout already. September 16th night game in Ross-Ade Stadium. We know Fresno State is not a sellout, or at least as I understand it. I don't think they're going to get to that number, but I could be wrong. But Ohio State's coming to town, but will they get a third sellout or a third one approaching that number? What do you think?
I think they will. I think the homecoming game will sell out against Illinois on September 30th. They're going to dedicate Tiller Tunnel that day. Maybe Purdue's 3-1 or 4-0, Alan.
Yeah.
I know Arnett Tiller is going to be here with a bunch of Tiller family members. Sean Phillips is supposed to be the honorary captain. Storylines write themselves with Brett Bielema facing off against Ryan Walters, of course, too. So a lot of juiciness here. And again, it could really be amplified if these teams are both playing well, especially obviously for Purdue because they're at home. So yeah, I think Syracuse, Illinois, and I think Ohio State will sell out just based on Buckeye fans streaming over on I-70. But yeah, then you got Minnesota and IU.
IU is always sold better than you think. I mean, it sells better, obviously, at Purdue than it does in Bloomington by a long shot. And I don't. It is. I think I'm going to buy it. I think I've been surprised over the year just how not this year even how much support and the fan following the numbers, the ticket numbers have nearly 40,000 in season ticket sales. That to me is interesting in its own right. So I'm with you, but boy, it doesn't take me, and again, I remember stuff like this, and so do you. But God, I can remember Tim Beckman versus Daryl Hazel in Ross-Ade Stadium, and there couldn't have been more than 15,000 people in there. So it's just amazing to me that transformation has happened the way that it is. It's impressive from that standpoint that Ross-Ade Stadium is hopping. It's become. There's no question that this job that they did on it is going to make it sparkle even more. And I think that adds to it. And I think you're right. I think people. I didn't think this was possible. I really didn't. Boy, when Jeff Brom took the job in 2017. I think I said publicly, I think they knew Notre Dame was on the schedule in 2024 at that time, which is, I think, still the case, right? I said, that'll be their next sellout, because I said, it's going to take them that long. And gosh, Jeff Brom sold out some games in that first year. I think the Michigan game in his first year, third home game or whatever it was. My point is that it's come back faster than I thought, and it's stayed strong and has become a thing to do, which I know college football is, but throughout, like you and I talked about, through all the things we've heard on NIL and transfer portal and all the realignment, fans still want to go. We're still interested in seeing.
They love Al. It's like kids going to watch it's like parents going to watch their kids play youth sports. It's the same way with people wanting to go back to their alma mater. They love their school. They love seeing their friends and family. It's an event, Alan, as much as the game itself. And that's always a big draw. Now, when you start winning, then you get the other kind of fringe people piling on too. But yeah, there's always a strong pull for that core of people. But you're right, it was in disarray. You had to sit through it, Alan, during Hazel. And credit Jeff Brom, right?
No doubt. You
can't for the way people like to pick his nits and complain about some of his tactics. I think history's going to look back pretty fondly on his 6-year era.
No question. And the fact that he was over 500 and yes, he had a couple of years that he'd like to get back, 2019 and 2020 without question. But yes, that I don't think you can debate that all that much. And yeah, it's interesting. I think the advent, but the fact there's a lot of intrigue of these night games. Now, we know the Illinois game is not definitely at night, and we're still working that out. Though I think I've said that too many times publicly. That the fact that you got night football also against Syracuse has a huge factor of getting that game sold out. And Wisconsin, now I don't know that game. Wisconsin,
I don't think that's going to make. I was talking to somebody.
Yeah, Friday night is a tough.
Sweets. Yeah, Sweets getting turned back in. Friday night's a tough sell, and
Friday night's a tough sell and it probably cost you 3,000 or 4,000 Badger fans too. And it's good as it's made for TV, and it will be a great environment. The students will be there, and it'd be party time and all that. But I agree. I think that limits that game. You play that game on Saturday the 23rd, and it's probably different because that's I agree with you. I think, but if you put Illinois at night or whatever that happens, or even later in the day, I think that makes a big difference. Yeah. I do think even Fresno State, Ryan Walrus talks about that feeling of coming out of that tunnel and what it's going to be like. I'm not going to be a spoiler alert, but it's always been tough at those noon starts to get the students there all on time. Now, students have kind of taken a lot of pride of late of getting there early. But we haven't had very many noon starts, and we being Purdue. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, just how many people are there at kickoff.
You'd hope with a new stadium, a new student section.
I think you will, but it tends to be late arriving. But that whole thing.
What are they doing now? Are they sitting in the room studying on Saturday morning? What's going on?
I think there's a thing called breakfast.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. So now. I think that's the thing. I'm going to last one, and I'm going to throw this out of left field too. Do you buy or sell the fact that it's tougher? I'm not a gambler at all. Never have, but never have, at least on college sports. Do you buy or sell the whole West Coast thing? The fact that Fresno State's playing at 9:00 their time. There's been so much. There's been stuff written about this. Mm-hmm. They're playing at 9:00 now. They're going to come. They're not coming. I remember back in the day when Stanford came in I think it was the 1981 game, came like 3 days before because school hadn't started. My guess is Fresno's not going to be here on Wednesday afternoon to acclimate. But do you buy any of that stuff at all? Do you think that matters at all heading into that season opener?
I don't. I think it's probably overrated. I do. Yeah, I think it's overrated. I think if there is any sleepwalking on their part or lethargy, I think that they'll snap out of it quick. Once you get your pads on now, once you get running around, get a sweat going, once you start hitting, all that's out the window. You're playing football, and your body clock stuff, I don't think matters. These guys are 18 to 22 years old.
Shouldn't matter much.
They'll adapt. They'll be fine. Again, I think people are searching for storylines.
Oh yeah,
always kind of gravitate to those type of things, and have they never planned temperatures below this? that may be more impactful, or something like that, or going to altitude may be more impactful than talking about somebody having to go from the west to the east to play a game. So I'm not buying that. I think that's overrated. And like I said, if it is a factor, it's something I think these guys will get over quickly. Like I said, once they buckle that chin strap and are sweating and hitting each other.
Well, those things always come into play, Tom, when you fumble an opening kickoff,
Yeah,
or you get down 14-0, or throw a pick six, and all of a sudden, you're down 14 zip, which you don't want to have happen if you're Purdue or Fresno State. Certainly. I think in this kind of game, certainly for Purdue, you want to show you're stable on the front end, that you're there to play, and don't want to shoot yourself in the rear end early. That's the most obvious thing. That's the same thing for any football game, but I think it plays maybe a little bit more for this one, just because you want to get yourself established if you're Purdue. But I'm with you. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. And Fresno State has a very experienced coaching staff that will know has played. This is not their first rodeo, unlike Ryan Walters. So that's what's going to be
I would not want to be playing these guys, Alan. That's all I'm going to say. Whoever scheduled this game, I think we know who did schedule it.
Yeah.
What are you doing playing Fresno State ever?
Yeah,
and that's the bowl game. I mean, especially to start a year. I mean, it's
always been a historically difficult program.
You don't want to. You got a new coach, a new stadium, all this new era. You don't want to come out and lay an egg. I mean, even if they do, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's just one game, but still, boy, you'd like to get that win just to perpetuate the honeymoon and keep the mojo going now, because they got to go to Virginia Tech next week.
Right.
And I know the Hokies aren't 19 or 2001 Frank Beamer Hokies, but Lane Stadium's a tough place to play. That's a prideful program that's looking for some momentum too, Alan. I guarantee you, they think, hey, here comes Purdue. We're going to beat them easy. So, it goes without saying you want to be 1-0 going to Blacksburg next week. So, yeah, this whole month of September, 4 out of 5 games at home. Boy, you'd love to get this one, because if you do trip up in Blacksburg, you're 1-1 with 3 home games looking at you in September. Maybe you win 2 of those. So again, golly, you hate to put so much on one game, but I'm going to go ahead and put so much on one game, Alan. This is a big game.
Yeah, big game for Purdue. Big one to set the tone for the rest of the season, without a doubt. All right. Well, we appreciate. Always fun doing this, Tom. And usually this is probably a little bit longer version, but start of the year. But we always, or at least good to have something interesting to talk about. That's always a plus. And right now, as they always say, the Boilermakers are undefeated and untied. And that's a good thing in terms of interest. And we'll see how all that plays out over time. But we'll be, one thing's for sure, goldenblack.com and Tom Dienhart, Brian Newbert, Mike Carmen. It's the dream team of
Alan Carpet, Jordan Jones.
Jordan, we're ready to go to try to bring you something interesting come the end of this day. So, Tom, thanks again. I want to thank our good friends at AcrePro Midwest Farm Group. I told you I'd give you that phone number, acrepro.com, or call 765-587-3185. And I think actually there's another number too. It's for Kyle that I need to provide for you. But when you're doing a 1031 exchange or simply buying and selling farmland, your local AcrePro agent will walk the land with you and make sure that deal is done right. And Kyle has always been good about making sure that he's out of the Trent Johnson mode. He's always been a good guy to be not only a Purdue supporter. I think he's also on the chain gang. He's the guy. Kyle is the one that writes down every play on the line, because in case they have the power goes out or whatever, it's there. So he has a very important role. And that number, Kyle's direct number, and I should give you that number, 765-775-6502 to get a hold of Kyle Spray. He's your guy with AcrePro, and we appreciate their support for another year. All right, we'll be back next week. We'll be buying or selling whatever that will be, heading into the Purdue Virginia Tech battle in Blacksburg. That will be an interesting trip for Mr. D. Have you been there before in your college?
Yeah, I have. I have been there once, and I was going to ask you, Alan. I don't believe Purdue's ever played in the state of Virginia.
That is correct.
I didn't
Yeah,
think
I
about
know.
it. I thought about that once. I don't think they've ever played.
That is correct.
Yeah.
They have played Virginia Tech at home. Of course, Danny Awichiku had a 90-yard return, and Purdue got beat about 100 to 7.
Yeah.
No, it was a 50-something to 20, and that one back in 2014, I want to say, when the Hokie, and they weren't all, Virginia Tech wasn't all that good.
Oh.
Purdue has obviously played Virginia. They have in the 1984 Peach Bowl, a regrettable game when the Magic Man Don Mikowski beat Purdue in Fulton County Stadium, and Jim Coletto and Leon Burnett did not see eye to eye in the locker room at halftime. I know that story. And Jim Everett was the quarterback. Purdue blew a 10-point halftime lead and lost that game. Howard Petty, wasn't it, the running back for
they had Barry Word, who ended up playing Chiefs, and Christian Okoye. But that game sort of set the tone for what turned out to be a very disappointing 1985 too. But
no question. And of course, Purdue played Virginia. I think the only other time, 1968, to open up, and the Boilermakers were ranked number 1, beat the Wahoos 44-6 in West Lafayette. But that Virginia, that's not Virginia Tech. They've never played James Madison. Obviously, I think you're right on that. I don't think they've ever set.
That'll be the first trip to the Commonwealth of Virginia, so there's some history there.
There will be some cool thing, and you'll be hopefully you'll get home in there within a week. So it's always
be good. Like I said, I'm going to fly to Charlotte. It's about a 3-hour drive from Charlotte. I just want to have a direct flight from Indianapolis.
Oh, you are going to do Charlotte as opposed to Roanoke. Good.
Yeah, I didn't want to connect, so I'm going Charlotte, and I'm staying by the airport, and it's a noon game. I can leave early on Saturday morning, and I can get back to my hotel maybe by 9-10 o'clock Saturday night, and I won't have to make a long drive Sunday morning. So that was my plan.
Yeah, interesting. That's good. That is your plan. That's what you're going to stick to. All right, guys. Hey, Tom, thanks so much, and thanks to Acre Pro, and we'll see you next week on acrepro.com. Buy, sell. We'll have a lot of fun with that. We had fun with this one, and we'll look forward to the start of this season. So have a good rest of the week, everybody.